Remains is a contemporary poem looking at the trauma that can be caused by warfare and what it can do to people. In this occasion, Simon Armitage interviewed a number of soldiers, and there's a kind of conversational, colloquial way to the expression here. And what's interesting is how Armitage is able to transform that interview, these conversations, into actual poetry. And how he does that is really by exploring the graphic detail of what it means to actually kill someone, and how the speaker then is haunted and disturbed by that graphic imagery, and how killing, even if it's justified, but especially if it isn't, can erode our sense of ourselves. And that really is the pun in that title, Remains. What remains could be the remains of a body. It could be what remains after an event, or how someone feels. On another occasion, so he's telling multiple stories. So two groups, got sent out to tackle looters raiding a bank, and one of them legs it up the road, probably armed, possibly not. So that detail is really important. The repetition of pa, the variation links the words, probably armed, possibly not. This is what most of the poem really hinges on. Legs it up the road. We just get individual body parts used as verbs, which will also be relevant to the poem. The rest, we should notice, is very conversational, really not poetic very much at all. Even that repetition there in line 4. Well, myself and somebody else are all of the same mind. So all three of us open fire, three of a kind, all letting fly. Somebody else and somebody else, it's anonymous. Again, you can sense it's still conversational. He's sharing the blame in a way. We're the same mind. We all thought, okay, look, there are looters coming out of a bank. This is what we have to do. And what do? They letting fly. They fire. And, you should reflect for a second that even though you may understand exactly what that means, that is poetic language. That's the poetic language we use on a daily basis. And what does it suggest? It perhaps suggests that they allowed all their inhibitions to leap out and be free. I don't know, but I think that zooming in on everyday language can help you think about how poetry works. The enjambment, the story continues to flow through, giving it the sense of prose. It's not over. It lingers, and I swear I see every round as it rips, not through his body, but through his life. So body versus his life. What's the difference between those things? I feel like he imagines the whole duration of his life from birth to death. It doesn't just rip through his physical body, but almost through his emotional body. I see broad daylight on the other side. He can see the actual light through the holes. That's graphic, extraordinary detail. So they've shot him 12 times. And more graphic detail, sort of inside out. Sort of. So that's qualifier. But actually, his innards on the ground. They've destroyed him. Pain itself, the image of agony. So we have to follow the grammatical unit. He's on the ground. He is the image of agony. The pain itself on the ground. So in this moment that he's recounting, it's completely done something to him, transformed him. And again, if we go back to line 4, there's that suspicion. Well, was he armed? Was he not? I don't know. And the sense of guilt and worry. One of my mates goes back and tosses his guts back into his body. Then he's carted off in the back of a lorry. There's a half rhyme there with body and lorry. But its image again is grotesque, uncaring. He's carted off. It's a brutal image that perhaps we come to understand really reflects the speaker's sense of self-loathing and anger about what's occurred. And his story, except not really. These pauses throughout the poem, caesuras, undercut, the second after the caesura seems to undercut what comes before it. And that's really very interesting when you look at the poem, why he's doing that. He's giving you both feelings. End of story, so it's over, except not really. And it's really this part that's telling us what the poem's about. It should be over, but it's not really. It remains. His blood shadow stays on the street. That is a wow image. Shadows created by light, but here it is a blood. Blood that maintains blood memory. Physical, but also it's doing something to his own memory. I walk right over it week after week. So what's it doing to him? The repetition, the time, seems to suggest that it's really eroding him, bearing deeply on him. Then I'm home on leave. Again, we get that contrast. Hope he can escape. Can he escape it? But I blink and he bursts again through the doors of the bank. No, he can't escape. It's in dream. It haunts him. Sleep, and he's probably armed, possibly not. Dream, and he's torn apart by the dozen rounds. Here again, the caesuras emphasize that these do not give relief. If I sleep, my guilt says, well, which one was it? Was he armed? But maybe he wasn't. The doubt. If he dreams, the image he sees. So here we just have doubt, guilt. And he's trying to escape, and it won't work. He can't clean it out of himself. It's stuck. He's here in my head when I close my eyes, dug in behind enemy line, not left for dead in some distant sun-stunned, sand-smothered land, or 6 feet under in the desert sand. Here we have a poetic moment. Sun-stunned, sand-smothered, 6 feet under. He isn't in this poetic land, but he's actually in his head, stuck with him when he's in war, stuck with him all the time, but near to the knuckle, here and now. His bloody life in my bloody hands, here and now. He's right here in my fist. The image I get there is almost that he's punching the wall, or that he wants to hurt himself because he feels guilty and he feels the presence of hurting this guy all the time. And his bloody life, bloody here could be used in a way like swearing, his bloody life in my bloody hands, but then very quickly turns into the image, which is the key image of the poem. His bloody hands, his blood is on my hands, his absolute feeling of guilt and being haunted by this killing and by his presence there. And that's really what lingers as the lasting image of this poem, the blood on his hands and the guilt. And if you contrast this to the feeling of someone like the Duke in the poem My Last Duchess, there's a real disparity here in the feelings of what it means to kill someone.